How's it going, everybody? Alright, so in this video I'll be showing you how to install the Mcwill LCD kit onto this Linux Model 2. Now it seems like it's going to be a pretty challenging upgrade, but it's actually pretty straightforward. There isn't too many soldering points you have to do. You got some here up front. This is gonna be your main ones, and then you got your VCC ground and a few other ones up in the back here. So if you follow the instructions, it's pretty straightforward. I would say the hardest part is actually replacing the capacitors on this console here. Now I actually already replaced the capacitors in this console here because it takes quite a bit of time to get them all done. But if you have a nice and hot tip and some wick, it's not that hard. I would use this a flat one. It's pretty short, so it can dispense more heat onto the board quickly, and then you just wick out all the solder from the capacitors on the back of the board, and the capacitors will just fall out. And I will make another video showing you how to replace all the capacitors, but in this video I just want to show you solely installing the Mcwill kit here. So if you're gonna need some instructions, there's plenty of videos out on YouTube, or even instructions online how to replace the capacitors. It's a bit of a challenging job for this because there's just so much of them, and some of them are in really tight areas, but it's definitely doable if you get the right tools. So, and of course, like I said, I replaced all the capacitors on this console here. So to open it up, you're gonna want to remove the grip pads here first. So you got one on the left and on the right side. Once you remove those, you're gonna have 4 screws here. Take those out, and you do have one inside the battery compartment, so don't forget to remove that one. So once the screws are out, the top just pops off, and then what I usually do is remove the battery tray first. So you start on one side, pull it up a little bit, and twist the other side away. Now we're gonna go ahead and disconnect the ribbon cables here to the screen and all the buttons. So now, of course, mine already disconnected, but I'm just gonna show you what you need to do. So from the back here where the battery tray was, you have these ribbon here, and they're connected by this little connectors here. So what you need to do is grab a flathead screwdriver or so and just pull down on those little locks. So unlock them, pull down on both of them, so on one side and the other, and the ribbon cables will just pull away from those connectors. So once that's out, you're also gonna have your speaker connector here and the backlight. So, and of course, like I said, mine's already disconnected, but they just pull right out. So, and then your board is out. Okay, not the best video showing you how to take it apart, but like I said, I just want to show you how to install the Mcwill kit here. But it's pretty straightforward how to take this thing apart. Only 4 or 5 screws and a few connectors, and the board is out. So as you see, all those capacitors here, I already replaced all of them, and you would have to go on the back of the board here, wick away the solder, and take the capacitors out and replace them with new ones. So all right, so let's go ahead and get started with the installation. So we need to focus on the left side of the board here, I guess whichever way you're looking at it, but with the battery connector pointing down, it's gonna be on your left side here. So we need to remove the power module here, a few transistors, and a few capacitors here. So we're basically creating a 5-volt rail for the board here, because if your board gets anything more than 5 volts, you're running a chance of ruining it. So I guess the first thing I'm gonna go ahead start is removing these 2 capacitors here. So there's gonna be capacitor C56 and capacitor C55. So once I remove those, I want to go ahead and remove this power module here. So that also needs to be completely removed. And what I do is grab my hot iron, make sure it's nice and hot, and then I would grab my wick, and I would just wick away all the solder from the pins on the back of the board. So we'll do the 2 capacitors and the power module here. So add some flux first. Flux makes the job a lot easier. So we got the power module here, and let's see where the capacitors, and it's going to be a capacitor here, and this one as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wick that away. So if you have enough flux on there, put down a nice clean area of your wick, apply some heat, and it will just wick away all the solder away from the pins. So you just do all the connectors, just go across and wick away all that solder. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for the rest of the pins here. All right, so once all the solder is wicked away, what you want to do is with one of your fingers, so hold down to the capacitor, the ones you're wicked away, and apply just a little bit of more heat to the pads where the capacitor is. So just put down the heat and pull away with your finger, or just wiggle it and it will fall right out. And the same thing with this power module. So I already wicked away all the solder, but there's just a little bit more holding it in place. So you just kind of gotta heat it up, wiggle it, and it will fall out. Now I usually use hot air to heat this place up, and the power module will just fall out. But just for demonstrations here, I'm gonna go ahead and use the solder. Okay, so I got one side out, and if you just take your gun here, the tip, and just kind of wiggle each pin while it's warm, it'll break away from the pads. So once you do that, again, just wiggle it, and there it is, comes right out. So I'm just gonna go over each pad here and make sure that there's no short circuits here, or no bridges, I should say. Okay, so with the power module removed and the 2 capacitors, we now want to go ahead and focus on these 2 transistors here. So it's going to be transistors Q14 and transistor Q13. So again, it's going to be the same thing. Apply some flux and wick away the solder. All right, so the solder wicked away, again, use one of your fingers, apply some more heat to the pads, and just kind of wiggle away the transistors, and it will fall out. So we got one, and here comes the other, and there is the other. So okay, now transistors removed, we're now gonna go ahead and remove the L17 coil here. So again, apply some flux and wick away the solder. Okay, all right, and again, same thing. Apply a little bit more of heat and wiggle with your fingers, and there it is, came right out. All right, so that's gonna be it for removing all the components that is required. So now this is a really important thing. What you want to do is check if your 5-volt rail is good. So you're gonna check where your L17 coil was. So it's gonna be the top pad here, and where 12 is, where your T1 power module is gonna be ground. So top of your L17 coil pad, and 12, where number 12 is right here, this is going to be a ground. I guess you can connect to any ground here, but this is going to be connector points to the kit. So you want to go ahead with your voltmeter and make sure you got 5 volts. If you got a little bit under, we got 4.85 or 4.80, anything around there from from 480 and up to 5 volts is good. If you got anything over 5, make sure to check your power rail. Now to check your power, make sure everything is good here without assembling the console. What I usually do is you have to have an AC cord, either an AC cord, or if you have a voltage injection, you can connect it, to the battery compartment and inject voltage there. And then we're also going to need a game, so put in a game, because this console will not boot without a game. So put in a game cartridge in. If I can put it in, there we go. Okay, so with that in, and what you need to do, and we're gonna need to bridge these 2 pins right here. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4th pin from the right on the bottom, and pin 1, 2, 3 on the top from the right. So if you bridge those 2 pins together, your console will power on. So, and then we're gonna go ahead, wrong way, and check it with our multimeter. So top connector here, that's gonna be your 5 volt rail, and then where your power T1 power module here, this bottom here is gonna be ground. I guess you can connect to ground anywhere, and actually this coil here, this is not, or the copper here, that's not ground, so do not connect it to that. So you can connect it to the negative terminal on the battery compartment, or just use the ground here. So, and we're at 480, so that's pretty good. And it's on the lower side, but like I said, anything between 480 to 5 volts, you're all set to go. So, and to power the console back off, so you just unplug it and you're good to go. Now it's also recommended to change out your voltage regulator or tune-up kit, I guess, that you can get from console 5. So this replaces the voltage regulator at Q12 here, or the MOSFET IC, I guess as they call it, and then you get 2 transistors here, and then also diode at R69. So now usually this is the main cause of the no power issue with the Model 2 consoles here, but this one actually does power on fine and works good. But I always replace it either or, because over time it will fail, or it does fail, I guess I should say. So just because I'm installing new screen, and I want to make sure everything's new, so new capacitors and new power regulator as well, so everything is going to be good to go when the new screen is in. So if your console is working fine, I guess you could leave it, but it's recommended that you change that out too. And you can get the kit from, like I said, from console 5, and it comes with everything that you need to replace the power regulator tune-up kit here. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and change this out myself here, and for this I use hot air to heat it up and change the power regulator MOSFET and these 2 transistors here, including the diode as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and work through that. So we're gonna add some flux, and we're gonna use hot air to remove this IC here, or MOSFET. To apply some heat, and once it starts to move, you can just lift it away. You don't want to keep it just in one area, just kind of wiggle it around if you're using hot air. And there it is. So that's out. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my new one, add a little bit more flux. Should probably keep the board straight, but apply some more heat. Apply some pressure to it, and we're all good. So now I'm gonna go ahead and replace the transistors as well and the diode. And when you're replacing the diode here, you have to make sure that the black stripe here, if you can see it, there's always going to be a black stripe on the diode. So make sure that's facing towards this metal plate here, so towards TP19. Because if you do the other way, then voltage is not going to go through. So make sure that's in the right order. Okay, so with the power regulator replaced, I'm going to go ahead and check for my 5 volts again to make sure everything is good to go. Alright, so verified that we still have good voltage and we're good to proceed. So when you order the kit from, I ordered mine from Console 5, and I will leave the link in the description here for this kit, for the capacitor kit and the voltage tune-up kit if you decide you want to change that as well. So, and the kit, the Mcwill kit, comes with these wires here, and what I like to do is actually divide them into 2 strands each. So instead of doing it one by one, I would do 2 strands. I guess I ripped that one a little too far, but I would rip into 2 strands each. That way it's a lot easier to work with than, you know, versus having working with this whole cable here. Because I've seen people, you know, just cut a little bit here and then try to connect the whole cable onto the connectors here, and it's a mess really trying to guide this cable underneath wherever you need to go once the kit is installed. So it's easier to work with 2 strands of wire like this. So I cut them, rip them up into 2 pieces, strip the ends, and then we're gonna continue here. So we're gonna need 8, I believe, 8 or 10. So I'm just gonna do 10 for now. So 10 wires. So it's gonna be 2 each. So I'm gonna do a few more here, and then we'll continue with the installation. Okay, so now once you ripped all of your wires into 2 strands, you want to go ahead and strip. So just cut it a little bit, so you have 2 individual wires on the end like this, and then strip each end of the insulation off the wire. So you're going to do that on this side and on this side as well, on all of the wires here. So I'm going to go ahead and speed the process up here. Alright, so with all the wires ready to go, let's move on with the installation. So what I like to do is actually go ahead and start by pre-tinning all the connection points on the Mcwill kit. So we got all these here on the bottom, and then we have our VCC ground here, and then you have a backlight in here. And if you're not using VGA out, you want to bridge or just add a dab of solder on this pad here. So it's going to be the pad where it has like a little white circle around it. So just dab a bit of solder here if you're not using VGA out. So just pre-tin all those pads here, and then also on the board here. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one first. So just gonna add some flux to all the pads here, and introduce a little bit of solder to all the points. So you just dab it a little bit. Alright, so should look something like this. Just a little bit of solder on all of the pads. So with that good, let's go ahead and continue doing it on doing the same thing on the board here. So again, we're gonna have our 5-volt rail here, ground, So 5-volt ground, and then we're gonna have a bunch of connectors here. So it's gonna be on the top row here, it's gonna be pin 4 and 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the bottom row it's gonna be 3 through 9. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 3 up to 9. So all these pins we're gonna connect wires to. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and pre-tin all those pins here, and of course the power and the ground. And then we also have a backlight connector here, but I'll get to that later. So I'm gonna go ahead and pre-tin, introduce a little bit of solder to those connectors first. And go ahead and add some flux again to all those pins, and just dab a little bit of solder to each pin, so that way we have a good connection when we add the wires. Okay, so with all those points pre-tinted, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the LCD here. So I'm gonna connect all the wires first to the LCD. So just grab, like I said, your double strand of wires where you already stripped insulation from them, and then just connect them 2 by 2 to each pads on the board here. So we have a little bit of flux already, but we can add a little bit of more. And if you do need more solder, you can just dab it on your hot iron and connect it to the board. So I got one, and the second one here. So just go ahead and do that for the rest of the pads. Alright, so with all these wires connected here on the front, we have 3 more on the back we need to do. So we got the VCC, the ground, and we're gonna have the backlight. So it's gonna be the last pad here, and that's gonna be your backlight ground or backlight connection. So just 3 wires here in the back. So just do the same thing here. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we have all the wires connected to the board. I know it looks like a mess right now, but we'll put it all together. So let's go ahead and start wiring everything up to the main board here. So first, what I would like to do, or what I usually do first, is connect the VCC, the 5-volt rail, and the ground first. So the 5 volts, this pin here, and our ground is going to be here. Let's grab a little bit more solder here. Alright, and you can always double check with your multimeter, make sure you don't mess anything up, and just beep it out. So we got VCC, 5 volts, and ground. Good. Alright. Alright, so for the power and the ground connected, we're gonna go ahead and move on to all the wires up here in the front. So, and the way I like to do it, just start from the left and work my way to the right. So grab the 2 first wires here, make sure you got the right one. So the first one will be right here. Okay, and the first one is going to be a clock signal, and this will be pin number 8 from the left to here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the first one is going to be pin number 8. So let's go ahead and connect that and dab that on there. Alright, Make sure nice on there. Okay, and then the second one is gonna be data cable, so data D1. So 5th pin from the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's go ahead and connect that. Okay, the next two will be another data line and then a reset line. So D0 will be right before the first data line, before D1. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th pin from the left on the bottom row. Sometimes you might need to add a little bit more solder, but that one is fine. Okay, and then next one will be the reset line, and that will be pin number 3. Grab my tweezers here. So 1, 2, 3. All right, and the next two will be CL2 and then CLK-A2. So the left wire is gonna be the CL2, and that's gonna be pin number 9. So that's gonna be the last pin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Go ahead and put 9. And then CLK-A2 is gonna be number 7. So pin number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I like to count out each pin for each wire, just in case, you know, I messed one up. So I know it's going into the right pin for sure. Okay, and then the next two, it's going to be 2 more data lines. So data 3 and data 2, and these two are going to be on the top row pins. So pin number 4 and 5. So data 3 is going to be pin 5, and data 2 is going to be pin 2. Okay, so 3 will be going pin 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And data 2 will be going to pin 4. And it is getting pretty crowded in here already with all these wires. So sometimes you might hit another one while you're trying to solder one, like I just did. But take your time. Make sure you don't create any bridges between other pins. Okay. And make sure you're making a good connection as well. Now last wire is going to be CLK-A3, and that's going to be pin number 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Okay, so all those wires are connected. Last wire we have left is our backlight wire to this via right here. So you want to scratch off the masking a little bit to reveal the copper. So scratch it off a little bit. Make sure you have a nice clean connection here. I'm going to use my knife. Okay, so once you clean that area up a little bit, clean it up with some alcohol. Add a little bit of flux, and we're gonna dab a little bit of solder on there. All right, and we're also gonna pre-tin my wire here. All right, so with that last backlight wire connected, we're all done. So now we basically need to clean up all the flux off the board, clean up all the flux here, and get this thing ready to assemble. But before I do all that, let's go ahead and test it, make sure everything is in good working condition. So plug in the game cartridge. We're gonna give it some power. Nope, you don't want to plug it into the aux cable. All right, and like I said, we're gonna need to pin these two wires or connectors here. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom and 3rd on the top. So if we pin them or bridge them together, our console should turn on. And there it is. So it's gonna take a minute to load, but everything works perfect. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this flux off the board. So let's go ahead and power this off. Just unplug the wire and get some alcohol, a brush, and a napkin, and clean all the unnecessary flux off the board. All right, with everything cleaned up, I did add a little bit of tape in these areas here just to keep everything safe and making sure nothing short circuits. And we're all good to start assembling it. So let's put this to the side for now. And we need to focus on the top shell here. So we need to go ahead and remove this old LCD, and that's being held on by these 4 screws right here. So just go ahead, take the screws out. All right, with the screws out, it should just pop right out. And don't get rid of the screws, because you will be using these screws to put back the Mcwill. It's going to be holding it in place here. So put the screws to the side. Now this is a good time if you want to clean the lens here. There is these 4 little locks. So I got 2 here and 2 on the other side. So if you just push on those little clips here, I don't know if you can see it, but if you push on it, it will unlock. So push on it and then go on the other side, push on it as well. It's a little tricky sometimes. You don't want to be that rough, but you get the point. And it will just come right out. So that's a good time to just wipe everything down, get rid of all the dust. So I will do that off camera, put it to the side for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring in our LCD now. So let's go ahead and place the screen in. So there's only one way it goes in, because there's 4 screw holes right here, and then there's 4 posts right here. So it will drop in like this. Now these wires are all over the place, but I will be taping them together. So go ahead and put in the screen in just like this. Now I usually, because there's a protective film on the LCD, and I usually will keep that on for now because you can take it out from the front. That way it keeps your LCD nice and clean. Just bend this tab back so you can reach it. So put the LCD right in there. Once it's in there, we're gonna go ahead and use the 4 screws that you removed from the old LCD, and we're gonna go ahead and screw down this new LCD in place. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure all the wires are in here nice and snugly. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some tape and I'll twist the wires around a little bit. Now you don't want to put too much force on them. Just be gentle. I'm gonna twist them around a little bit so it's a nice ribbon cable or cable looking. And I'm gonna go ahead and put some tape around them. Same thing with these wires here. Alright, so I added some tape to the wires to kind of make sure everything, all of them are nice and in place. So they're not all over the place here. So the last thing we have to do is connect our speaker wire here. And then we also need to connect the ribbon cable here. This is all for the controls in the front here, for all the buttons. So let's go ahead, and it's easier to actually put it down in place first, and just make sure all the wires are tucked in here. So we'll put it down, and then we'll connect the ribbon cable from the back over here. So make sure that the little latch is down, and we're gonna push the ribbon cable in. It's best with 2 fingers. And you want to be really gentle with this ribbon cable because it can wear out easily, and once it's worn out, a lot of your buttons aren't going to work. So you don't want to push it in and out, in and out. So once it's in, go ahead and lock it. Okay, so that's in. Alright, so now we have to put our battery tray in. So we'll go ahead and put this side in first, and then this side just goes right in there. Okay. Alright, so now put the back on, and we should be good to go. And of course we still have to put on our front lens. So once you get that cleaned and all the dust removed to your liking, this will just clip right on there. For now, let's put a game in and make sure everything is working properly. Grab my power cable here and let's power it on. Make sure all the buttons work. Volume works good. Skip that. Go down. Let's do BMX. Alright, well, I'm not good at this game, but as you see, everything is working good. Alright. Power it off, power it on again, just make sure. Takes a minute to load. Let's try these bottom buttons here. Yeah, we're good. All right, so I guess all I have to left is put on the lens and we're good to go. All right, so with the lens nice and clean, let me go ahead and make sure it's the right way up. Let's go ahead and remove the film from the LCD. Make sure there's no dust. I'm gonna go ahead and place the middle bracket here. I do have some air to blow it just in case there's gonna be any dust. Get it out of there. And we can go ahead and place our LCD or lens in place. Now there's a little speck here. Now if you do find little specks, I just use some pliers, needle nose pliers, to remove any specks of dust if I see any. So, and then making sure that your power line is lined up with the LED. Now there's little notches on the side of the lenses here. I usually put those in first on one side, put it in on the other side, lock it in, and then push down on the lens until you hear the clicks. So that's all done. All you got left, put in the screws. Let's drop our screws in there. And then our rubber pads, our grip pads. Now when you usually take these off, the adhesive comes off as well. So what I do is I do have some 3M adhesive, and I'll just cut little strips and place them right in here, and this will just glue right in there. All right, so the pad's in. All we have left is a battery compartment. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some batteries in. We have some batteries here just to test it with batteries, make sure everything is working good. Close the tray up. And power it on. Volume works good. Now if we hit the backlight button, you see it activates the scaling mode. It kind of mimics the original screen. So skip that. Screen flip, looks good. Let's try BMX again. And alright, this is probably the best I ever did. And I screwed up. Alright, so we're all done. Everything works good. It looks good. And I hope this helps you get yours going. So thank you for watching. Like this video and leave a comments below if you have any questions, and I'll get back to you. Thank you.